Here's the part that you may not believe or that you might think is a little bit insane. So here is what the Department of Justice proposes. They propose that buyer broker fees get completely abolished. Is the death of buyer broker commissions finally here in the real estate industry? In some crazy developments with regard to the lawsuits going on around the country with respect to buyer broker commission, the Department of Justice has actually stepped into the ring and has made some requests that you might find a little bit crazy. Or not. Stay tuned, because I am going to put my ex-attorney hat on and cover all of this for you so that you know exactly how you can proceed in the current market, because my mission is to help you build a predictable, profitable, and fun business. And we're going to talk about all of that and how this will affect you. Don't go anywhere, and let's rock and roll. First things first, I have to give you the legal disclaimer. So I did go to law school. I did pass the bar in California, which is apparently pretty hard. And I practiced law for a few years, but I do not do that anymore. That was a long time ago and a few lives ago. And so the disclaimer is, do not take this as legal advice or counsel. Please check with your broker, your attorney, your accountant, and all of that good stuff. This video is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, if you have not been following along over the last year or so, there have been some lawsuits happening with respect to buyer broker commissions. And let me give you the super quick rundown and synopsis on this, and then I'm going to tell you what's going on with the Department of Justice. You're not going to believe what they are doing and how that will impact you, whether you represent buyers or sellers. It really doesn't matter. This will impact the entire industry going forward. So what's been happening basically is that there were a lot of lawsuits brought on behalf of buyers claiming that the buyer broker commissions actually inflate housing prices. The way that traditionally the industry has worked for as long as I've been in it, for 20 years, is that when a seller puts a property on the multiple listing service, what they do is they make an offer of buyer broker compensation, and they also pay their listing agent. So just as an example, again, example only, commissions are not set by law, they are not fixed. But typically, let's just say what happens is I'm a seller, I hire a real estate broker, and I say to them, hey, I'm going to pay you a total of 6%, and you are going to split that evenly with the buyer broker. So in the MLS, the listing agent actually publishes and says, hey, the cooperating broker fee is 3%. By the way, if you're wondering, this is basketball injury, broke my finger playing a little hoops, but that's beside the point. Just didn't want you looking at the splint going, what is that? Why does he have that on? So in any event, they split the commission, or however they want to set it. That is offered in the multiple listing service. So what happened was a bunch of attorneys, and I'm not going to blame it on the buyers because typically these are the lawyers. Lawyers came out, filed class action lawsuits all around the country saying that, hey, what this actually does is inflate the price of the home, and also it's anti-competitive because that fee is already put out there. There's all kinds of issues like, hey, if houses are offering more commission, does that incentivize buyer brokers to go show those houses, and all of that kind of stuff. And so what they want is they want a more transparent situation. So there have been lawsuits filed all over the country. And actually, in recent months, a lot of those lawsuits have started being settled because the jury verdicts came back and they found the MLSs and the brokerages like Keller Williams and Berkshire Hathaway and all these brokerages guilty of doing this, of anti-competitive practices, even though I got to tell you from the inside, I've been around these rooms, I've heard all this stuff, and there's never been collusion, in my opinion. There's never really been any sort of thing like that. But the question is, was that going on? And so there have been all these settlements happening. And in one of the settlements in particular in New England, the settlements have essentially come down to this. They have said that, okay, now what's going to happen is that, the sellers need to really disclose to everyone what the buyer broker compensation fee is, and so do the buyer agents. The buyer agents in their consultations with their clients need to explain that they are earning a commission from the seller side, what it is, and kind of how it works. And so people need to be more transparent about that. And there have been also some more things in the detailed settlements, but that's the gist of it. So if you're thinking, hey, doesn't that just mean we're going to do exactly the same thing we did before? Yes, you would be right, pretty much. And so in one of these settlements in New England, the Department of Justice actually got involved and said that we don't like the settlement. They filed a motion on their behalf in the interest of the United States, saying that we recommend that you reject, Mr. Judge, this settlement. So let's kind of go over some of the things they said, which to me are a little bit crazy, But I will also tell you, in some respects, I agree with them. Probably didn't think you'd hear me say that, but let's go through some of this stuff. I just want you to see exactly what's going on. Okay, so one of the things that I find really interesting is that the Department of Justice said that the proposed settlement, which includes a $3 million payment, by the way, so I won't say it doesn't have any teeth, but really, at the end of the day, who's gonna get that money? The lawyers, not the clients. And so anyway, the Department of Justice said that all this does is really make some cosmetic changes to the situation, and that it will perpetuate stubbornly high broker fees. Now look, this part I have a problem with. We live in the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. We live in a capitalist society. And so in capitalism, the market is free to set the prices. And so for the government to say that, hey, these commissions are stubbornly high, to me definitely it raises some questions, you know, like, hey, that's their opinion, but really the market sets those fees. And so what the Department of Justice goes on to say is that we don't like this settlement, and we propose something totally different. Here's the part that you may not believe or that you might think is a little bit insane. So here is what the Department of Justice proposes. They propose that buyer broker fees get completely abolished. No more scheduling or setting of buyer broker fees by the seller. Now, I'm not saying that buyer agents won't get paid, and they actually do talk about that here in this case. But what they are saying and what they are proposing is that there is no offer of compensation set in the multiple listing service, and that the buyer agent actually has to negotiate that on their own with their clients, the buyers. So instead of a buyer agent telling their clients, hey, you know, it's kind of free for you to work with me, I get paid by the seller, the offer is 2.5% or 3% or whatever, it says it in the MLS. Instead, the buyer agent would have to go to the buyer and say, here's how much I want to get paid. And oh, by the way, if you want, we can work that into the transaction. So tell me what you think about this. I'm curious as to your opinion. Let me know down in the comments what you think about that. If that were to be the situation, if the transactions were handled in that way, what would you think? And how would you go about working with buyers in that respect? It's a pretty interesting notion, right? So at the end of the day though, and the Department of Justice does acknowledge this in their motion, that ultimately that fee can still be worked into the transaction the same way. The buyers can submit an offer saying, for example, you know, we want to pay $500,000 for the house and our buyer broker fee is $15,000. So we want to work that in, whether the purchase price is $515 and then we take it off or however that looks. And then the seller would be able to compare net offers. So the seller would go, okay, this offer is $515, but we're paying $15,000 to the buyer agent. This offer is $500, but we're only paying $2,000. So the net difference is only $2,000. So that's kind of how the situation would play out if the Department of Justice suggestion were to get agreed upon by the judge. But I have to tell you, that would definitely mark a huge shift in the industry and how buyer broker commissions are handled. And so, you know, my thoughts are actually kind of interesting. I told you earlier that in some respects, I do agree with the Department of Justice. Here's the thing, nothing actually changes. At the end of the day, a buyer broker should, in their consultation, if you're a good agent, you do this, explain the fee, explain how it works, and if things get reversed, it's ultimately the same exact thing because it's coming out of the proceeds anyway. So the buyer broker would just have a different style of consultation with the buyer, but at the end of the day, the end result would be pretty similar. Also, here's what I want to mention. Regardless of what happens, regardless of how this plays out, regardless of the ultimate outcome, your job is still the same. And that is to go out and focus your business around getting clients and around client attraction every single day. Because if you don't, you will end up like 97% of agents and be broke. And if you don't want that to happen to you, then check out this video right over here.